come once again to discuss things.
This show on the road. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. This is not the episode of Geeky Gentlemen you were supposed to be getting because I don't fucking know. The world's a strange place. Hopefully we'll be doing Snowpiercer next week, or maybe it'll fall through the cracks again and you'll just never get to see the Geeky Gentlemen's thoughts on Snowpiercer, you know? And maybe it'll be one of those elusive Geeky Gentlemen episodes that never happened. Anyway, joining me today is Connor Nielsen. Connor was gonna, last minute come on for Snowpiercer, but I can't get a hold of Steve, so I had Connor just dream up a topic. Now, Connor, what are you gonna do? What topic are we gonna do that's not gonna disappoint the people who came here for Snowpiercer?
Well, hopefully this subject doesn't disappoint like actual prequels do disappoint, because we're going to be talking about prequels as a storytelling platform. Because sequels generally make sense, and then when we make prequels, oh, cool, prequels, but they're usually not very successful, and I want to talk about why.
That's interesting, because, as you say that, I'm immediately trying to think of prequels that do work. And I'm sure there are some, but I'm having a really hard time coming up with anything.
The only one I can really think of, sure, there's X-Men First Class, which is kind of a prequel, but kind of a reboot.
Oh, that is totally a reboot that they just decided last minute was in the same place.
Right, yeah. But I think the best date movie ever made, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, is probably the best prequel ever made.
Yeah, but you don't even realize that's a prequel until someone tells you.
Right, yeah. But I think that's kind of why it's the best prequel.
And it's almost the worst Indiana Jones movie, if not for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
You know what? I used to not like Temple of Doom, but I rewatched it recently. That movie is so much fun and the perfect date movie ever.
Well, my thing with Temple of Doom is I've always just assumed that, it was the ultimate, bro move of everyone just went along with saying that was a good movie so Steven Spielberg could get laid. I honestly feel like that's what that movie is. It's just everyone mutually agrees, okay, we're just going to watch it and pretend it's good so Steven Spielberg can get his dick wet.
And he got together, his wife is Willie in that movie.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing, is he made that movie to sleep with her. Or he cast her in that movie so she would sleep with him.
Yeah, makes sense.
I think that to this day, that is what is going on with that movie. Temple of Doom, don't get me wrong, Temple of Doom, it's an okay movie. I like it. I think it's a better character piece for Indiana Jones than Raiders of the Lost Ark, but still. Anyway, prequels. No, so I'm trying to think of something that is definitely a prequel that works. And I am having a really hard time coming up with anything now. God damn it.
Yeah, that's one thing, because I remember when I was on Who Reviews the Reviewers, I wrote an editorial piece of sorts that I was going to make this series of editorial-like videos that has not happened yet because my computer just decided to die.
Because people who are on Who Reviews the Reviewers never post any goddamn content on their own channel, that's why.
I know, and I'm trying. I'm really trying. But there's going to be a whole lot more stuff. I just have to do a Darwin Cook video for Geekvolution. But when that's done, I'm going to have 15 videos go up on my channel, so hopefully that'll pan out. But the whole point of one of these editorial videos was I was going to talk about why I think prequels are inherently faulty, is an inherently faulty premise for storytelling. Mm-hmm. I went to the Poetics by Aristotle. If you are unfamiliar with, if any listeners are unfamiliar with the Poetics, I would highly recommend checking them out. You can find it for free pretty much anywhere online. Basically what happened was, who was Aristotle's teacher?
Plato.
Plato, yeah. Plato and a lot of the philosophers of Aristotle's time were convinced that art, or as they call it, poetry, really was any form of art, like plays or any kind of narrative story, like kind of narrative art form. was not considered art. It was not considered high art, in a way that a lot of people like to say that video games are high art right now. Kind of a similar situation. So what happened was Aristotle broke down storytelling and narrative into a bunch of rules to scientifically explain why art is narrative storytelling and poetry is art. So he establishes a bunch of rules like what tragedy and comedy and all those kinds of forms of storytelling are. And in senior year, I studied them, and I've continued to study them since. And I just don't think, if you're looking at it by the Aristotelian point of view, it just isn't exactly a solid foundation to build a story on. And I'm not saying that the Poetics are the Bible, so to speak, but generally you want to follow them for an effective story.
Gotcha. Well, I would always contend when anyone brings up Aristotle in an argument is Aristotle was wrong about literally everything except for dolphins or mammals. Keep in mind, just general rule, if you're going to try to use Aristotle for anything, just keep in mind that he called women a birth defect. So, just, there's a little packet of information for you.
I didn't know that. I'm so sorry, women listeners. I'm sorry.
No, it's just like Aristotle's one of those guys, like he gets, touted up as one of the great philosophers, and just when you actually read a lot of his philosophy, he's just flat out wrong. Because he tried to do a lot of scientific stuff, and so just naturally, science from back then is just, wrong
right
now. So it's just really funny whenever anyone talks about it. He's like, he's just wrong about everything. He invented logic, but he was wrong.
And I know how you feel about logic.
Logic is very useful, but ultimately kind of gets lost up its own ass. Anyway.
Yeah.
No, but Aristotle's Poetics are certainly interesting, and he does make some good points, and like he's the one that kind of invented the formula of exposition, rising action, climax action, falling action, exposition, again, or alternatively epilogue. That was his format for how a story worked, and it's a pretty solid format, but a lot of things have challenged that. Yeah, I'm going through a list here on Wikipedia just of prequel movies, and there are a couple that I think work, but you wouldn't necessarily know they're a prequel, which is always a problem. Godfather Part Two is a prequel.
It's a prequel and a sequel.
Yeah, and the same thing for 300 Rise of an Empire, which, not a great movie, but an interesting sequel, prequel kind of thing.
Yeah, it's happening before, congruent, and after the events of the first 300.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of something that's like just standard prequel.
Oh,
I guess
there's that movie, The Phantom Menace, right?
I would actually make the argument that the Star Wars prequels, while not good movies, are not bad movies because of their stories. I think it's the dialogue, the bad direction, the overuse of poor CGI, and just a lot of other factors. But I think the foundation of the story, I think the plot points of the stories of the prequels are all actually pretty good. They're just there's definitely time wasted on things, pacing problems and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so,
but the
end product is undefendable though.
Right.
Just generally, like as far as telling it from a story perspective, just a looking at the plot alone as if we're talking about prequels as foundationally unsound, I think foundationally the Star Wars prequels were great. They just, like, you can tell that young George Lucas actually thought these out, kind of, and then old George Lucas just fucked them up.
Yeah, because then we're getting into this interesting point of, like, there's ideas and then there's execution. Like, David S. Goyer has made an entire career off of good ideas but poor execution. But the thing about prequels, and I'm trying to remember that document I wrote. Remember, I just kind of thought this topic up out of the blue, but the way I remembered that paper I wrote going was that a story is supposed to have a beginning, middle, and end, and then thematically and character-wise, it's pretty much supposed to end. And when you make a sequel, you might have the same characters, you might have the same settings and things, but it's supposed to be about a different thing. Because if you're just making a single, if you're just continuing the same thing that you were supposed to wrap up with the first movie, then you're not. Or if you're just like continuing. One moment.
Dog. Yeah, I'm just thinking about what Connor was saying.
Yeah.
The idea of wrapping or ending a story is kind of the whole point. But at the same time, have you ever watched any of John Green's videos or read any of his stuff?
I haven't, actually. I've only seen 2 movies based off of his books. One I liked and one I didn't. So.
Liked Fault in Our Stars, didn't like Paper Towns, I'm guessing?
Actually, the opposite.
Oh, interesting.
I really like Paper Towns.
Fault in Our Stars, I think is a very beautiful story, but he brings the point up, and he got this from fans asking him about his other books for years and years. There's a consistent thing in that about what happens at the end of this story, because the characters in that are obsessed with this book that just ends in the middle of a sentence. And so they're obsessed with this, and they want to know what happened to the characters after the book ended, and yada yada yada. And the idea was that the book was told as a diary, and the character that was writing the diary had cancer. So the idea is she either died while writing or got too sick to continue writing. And so they wanted to know what happened with the rest of the story, what happened with these other characters that were going on in this character's life. And so they go to ask the author. And the author is just a complete and total asshole, but he's ultimately saying the same thing that John Green tells all the people that ask him. It's like, oh, well, these are characters in a novel. They don't exist. They're not real. They ended the second the story did. There's no other story for them. So with the sequel, you're actually expounding on things that you leave up in the air, and that's why a lot of sequels can seem kind of forced, because the first movie was just so damn good. It's often the case that a sequel is something that comes that really there's nowhere left to take this character, but the damn movie did so well that we got to do something.
Right. Yeah, and that's why a lot of comedy sequels are just the same movie over again. And why I think movies like 22 Jump Street are actually kind of better, because they take, ideas and motifs from the first one and just do more with them because they know it's a sequel.
Yeah, and so that's where sequels come from, but sometimes you'll have a movie that will say it'll end with a character's death, so there's no way to do a sequel, so your only option then is to do a prequel. And those, I don't know, I think that it hasn't really been overly successful, obviously because I can't think of many that work.
Right.
I kind of like Hannibal Rising, but no one else does, so whatever.
Well, that's the thing, though, because when you make I heard people saying, like, oh, they should make a prequel movie of Game of Thrones. I've never watched Game of Thrones, but this is something I hear a lot. Oh, and we can have Sean Bean be the main character. It could be great.
Too old now.
Yeah, but then I hear people say, oh yeah, but I don't really like that idea. What if they made it set hundreds of thousands of years ago in the same world? And then I'm thinking, but is it even a prequel at that point?
Well, I mean, that's kind of what they did with some of the Star Wars video games, right?
Right.
The Knights of the Old Republic or whatever, they just went back 1,000 years in Star Wars canon and just did it. And people are actually kind of hoping that's what they'll do at Disney after a couple of years of doing, original trilogy era stuff. And I'd be down for that. Fuck, I never played those games, but I'd be down for that. I'd like to see, full-on Sith Jedi wars, like entire battles. That'd be the fucking most awesome thing ever.
That'd be awesome.
But, yeah, I don't know. I don't think, foundationally, from just a pure structural thing, I don't think there's anything wrong with the concept of a prequel. I just don't think it's been handled well, and I think you can maybe attribute that more to meddling or trying to force a story than you could to the concept of doing them themselves. If I can branch out from films, I guess I'd argue that Batman Year One is a prequel, because it takes place in Batman canon, like, after all this other stuff. Like, it is, Year One is the Batman origin that we never got, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, it happened right after Crisis on Infinite Earths, when they were trying to retell or reinvent for a new era of readers these characters' origins. That's why we got John Byrne's Man of Steel.
Yeah, but you're always doing that with comics, though.
That's true. That is true. But it was right after, like, a reboot, though. So it was trying to be a bit of a ground zero at the same time.
True. All right, let me think. Secret Origin.
Okay,
Green Lantern Secret Origin.
Great point.
Green Lantern Secret Origin, Jeff Johns thing, came out right in the middle of his run, and he used it to build in all this mythos that didn't exist for the Blackest Night stuff into Hal Jordan's origin. And it also built in the idea that the yellow impurity could be overcome. Back in the early days of Hal Jordan, he just, like, Atrocitus is about to kill Sinestro by, like, dropping a crane or something on him, like a big yellow construction crane. And Hal knocks it out of his hands with a construct, and he shouldn't be able to do that because it's yellow.
Yeah.
And so Secret Origin is a prequel. It's a retelling of the Hal Jordan origin, but it's come out when there's all this other canon. And so I think conceptually a prequel can work. It's just that they don't typically in Hollywood for whatever reason.
Yeah, and when we talk about comics, that's a serialized format. Do you think a serialized format is a better format for prequels?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's just that it's serialized, but it's that there's always possibility with comics, and they have functionally no budget, right?
Right.
Like, if you were to take the quote-unquote budget for a comic book and, like, just, you know, be as liberal as you want with the numbers, like, add printing costs in there to a Hollywood studio, exec, he would laugh and just hand you the money out of a drawer in his desk, right?
Yeah.
And of course it would be a man, because women are not allowed to work in Hollywood. Just like, there's no budget for comics, so there's just more room for experimentation, and there's honestly more time to perfect that kind of stuff. Whereas with movies, it's a short list on Wikipedia.
Right, I was so surprised. I think when we got the Star Wars prequels, that really opened up the floodgates for that kind of a story.
Yeah. The Powerpuff Girls movie is a prequel.
Oh, I had no idea.
So you got that.
Yeah, I mean, I have no knowledge of Powerpuff Girls. I mean, there's one named Bubbles, I think.
Yeah. No, I'm just looking through this list. It's a short list, so just it's something that I guess hasn't worked. Mask of the Phantasm, Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Everyone loves that fucking movie. That's a prequel to the animated series.
That is correct. I actually haven't seen Mask of the Phantasm since I was a kid. I barely remember that. I really want to go back to it, though, because I remember really liking it.
Yeah, it's a good one. No, so just, like, the more I think about it, the more I can think of good prequels. So it can work in Hollywood, it just typically doesn't. And I think, once again, if we're talking about do prequels work, yes or no, I guess I'd come down on, in film, I'd come down on no, just because they have a history of not working. But if the question is, can prequels work? I think the answer is yes.
Yeah.
It's just, there has to actually be a story there. Like, so many stories start with a character who's just in a fairly normal, average status quo, so they don't lend themselves to prequels, because, you know, you couldn't do Star Wars prequel centered on Luke Skywalker, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing, though, when it comes to Aristotle's The Poetics, he says, like, a story has to begin at the last possible second. Well, he doesn't really say that, but I'm trying to remember exactly what combination of his two. It's like a story's longevity and something else that has a convoluted word attached to it. But basically, a story has to begin at its last possible second, or you're just dragging your feet. Like, we get those last moments of Luke with his family because they are vital to his character. We don't see him farming because him farming isn't important to his character later in the movie.
Yeah. And so, you couldn't do a Luke Skywalker Star Wars prequel, but you could do a Palpatine's Rise to Power prequel. That conceptually makes sense. Something that you could do a prequel film on, but it probably just wouldn't be as interesting, is you could do a Jack Sparrow prequel. You could see Jack Sparrow and Barbossa on the Black Pearl together. You could do that story.
That's true.
I don't know if you really need to.
I think the difference between those characters and other characters is they work so well as supporting characters because, like, say, a lot of the characters in Sin City, they kind of belong in melodrama where they don't really have character arcs that are pretty much the same from movie to movie.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, the character there is interesting enough that it could be carried into something else.
Okay, yeah.
Sticking with pirates, you could do conceptually a younger Jack Sparrow movie or whatever. It could function in some way, shape, or form. I don't know how good it'd be, but it seems like there's enough of a story that you could do there. Whereas you couldn't do a younger William Turner movie. Because the story has to start there. Yeah, you
are right. But I guess when it comes to Jack Sparrow, I think it's arbitrary when you set his stories because I think he's the same character through and through.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying, like, he's got enough of an interesting life that you can believe there's an interesting backstory there.
Okay,
there's actually there's a PS2 game. It's called The Legend of Jack Sparrow, and he's just like telling this absolute bullshit story in a bar, and Will comes in and corrects him about all the fucking details, and it's this whole fucking thing. And then at the end, it comes to another cinematic, and, like, all the people that Jack was telling the story to turn into, like, skeletons or whatever, and, like, black smoke starts to fill the room as they, like, back Will and Jack into a corner, and they're pulling out their swords, and Will goes, "I swear if we weren't here experiencing this right now, I think you were making it up." And so it's the whole idea of just Jack Sparrow's a really extravagant personality, and so you never quite know when he's lying, but he has enough life experience that you can honestly believe all of his bullshit.
Dude, you know what'd be an awesome idea? Is to have a movie like a young Jack Sparrow movie, but have it narrated by older Jack Sparrow. So he's an unreliable narrator, or is he?
Yeah, that'd be fun. That's basically what that game was, and it was a pretty good, swashbuckling game. I still want a good Zorro game, damn it. Just an aside, I really want a good Zorro game. But it's one of those things. It's like a prequel. I do think conceptually it's feasible. There are things in other media. I'm trying to think of books. What are good prequel books?
Yeah, my knowledge of literature is depressingly minimal.
You just sit there in front of your screens and let them rot your brains.
Yeah, that's me. I go to way too many movies and I read comics, but that's about it. I know they made a sequel to The Shining.
Stephen King. What are you doing? You know what would be interesting to do sometime is to review Kubrick's Shining and King's Shining.
Well, that's interesting because I actually prefer Kubrick's Shining.
Oh, I mean, everyone does. I think it'd be interesting to compare them.
Oh, no, I've talked to many people. I sound like Donald Trump, sorry. I talked to a lot of people who actually think that the movie's terrible because they love the book so much.
And I think that's the thing is, it's not like the book but it's not trying to be
exactly. It's about different things.
Yeah,
and I think
regardless.
Yeah,
though,
yeah.
Just that was a thought that just entered my head, and now I'm trying to think of Stephen King prequels.
You'd think Stephen King probably experimented with a prequel at some point.
I'm sure he did. I don't think he's like a great writer or anything, but he's an idea factory. So some of the stuff he does works, and some of it's just awful.
Yeah. Let's see.
No, so I can't think of literature. Man, that is really hard to just... It's one of those things where I'm sure, people in the comments, if you're like screaming at your screen right now saying, why aren't they naming this? Please leave it in the comments below, because I feel like I hate when I'm put on the spot like that.
Yeah.
To try to think of things, and I can't. It's like your brain just turns off, and like as soon as we end this conversation, it's going to go, well, what about this, and this?
Oh yeah, like when I go back and listen to videos I was in, I'm like, and I can't, and I'm listening to myself not being able to think of something. I'm yelling at myself, you idiot! How could you not remember this?
It's one of those things. Like one of the suggestions I make to people, not that they ask me very often, but one of the suggestions I make to people whenever they ask me about doing videos is watch your old stuff religiously, and listen to how much of an idiot you are.
Yeah, it's important,
and it will make you better.
I know I get sick of listening to my voice. I really do, but it's important to listen to your voice to get better.
Mm-hmm.
One thing about prequels, though, and this is we talked about a bit on the character front. There's some characters that that do work for a prequel, like the like a Han Solo. And I'm not saying, Han Solo specifically, but like a Jack Sparrow, where they don't really have much of a change, but they have such a history that is brought into the, character A's story that you do want to see more of that person. Kind of like, I wouldn't mind like seeing, the Evan Peters Quicksilver from the Days of Future Past, a movie. Like, I would like to see like maybe a short film about him, just like at school.
Yeah, and they toyed around with the idea of giving Anne Hathaway her own Catwoman movie.
Right.
And that could have worked, conceptually.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where there's kind of like the character who's just at their status quo and normal life, and then there's the character with a batshit crazy life that they get introduced to.
Right.
John Belushi's been dead for a long time now, but I would have killed for the backstory with him and Carrie Fisher from Blues Brothers. I would have killed for that.
Okay, so, but when it comes to, like, plots, this is where it gets interesting. Because let's take Star Wars, for example, right? Mm-hmm. We have the first movie, then we have, which is pretty self-contained. Then we get The Empire Strikes Back.
They never get a second chance.
What's that?
They never thought they'd get a second chance.
That's right.
It's just, hold on, I got to make a quick aside. People that are making arguments that The Force Awakens is a bad movie because it doesn't stand on its own like the original Star Wars movie did, they never thought they'd get a chance to make a second Star Wars movie. This is trying to be a proper trilogy. So shut the fuck up. Okay, go ahead.
Also, Force Awakens is a great movie. Shut up. So, the thing about the original Star Wars is it's very self-contained. And then when we get to Empire Strikes Back, they kind of knew they could probably get away with a third movie because of just how much of a cultural and global phenomenon the original was. But the thing is, I know, like, it's like the classic cliffhanger of the ending of Empire Strikes Back. And now that we have hindsight, we can all, like, pop in Return of the Jedi and watch it. But I think, honestly, on a story level, the ending of Empire does kind of hurt itself and Jedi.
Really?
And I know that is sacrilege to say, but look, I freaking love the first half an hour of Jedi. It doesn't really have anything to do with the rest of the movie. It just doesn't. And which I think part of my complaint with the Jedi is that it feels like a status quo Star Wars movie when it's the finale. Which, anyways, but that's beside the point. But when we have like that ending of not being a finale, and you have to pop in, the Return of the Jedi to get any kind of closure on the ending of Empire, and then when you watch that, and then, okay, now we can start Jedi a half an hour into Jedi, there is a bizarre kind of storytelling pause.
Certainly, that's why most people will tell you that Jedi, like me, Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie. It's the weakest of the original trilogy.
But I get why people love it. Like, I really do. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, no, not just the fun part. I tear up a little bit every time I watch the scene with Emperor and Luke and Vader on the Death Star.
Oh, yeah. And Yoda dying, like, I cried as a child when that happened, man.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff like that, yeah. And I think the other thing that we haven't talked about with prequels, though, is stakes.
Right, and I think that's where I was leading to with my last point. But go ahead.
Yeah, it's just like this is a thing I have a lot. When I'm reading through all the Star Wars comics right now, and I'm quite enjoying them. The Darth Vader book is genius, and it's ending like everything I love. I don't know why. Every time I find a comic book that I'm like, yes, this is the greatest thing ever. Oh, it's getting canceled. Fuck you. Anyway, so like I'm loving the hell out of the Darth Vader book. But there's like there's a whole political plot about, is the Emperor going to replace Darth Vader as his apprentice, or are these like cyborg force user or force equivalent users gonna assassinate or stab Vader in the back or something? I'm like, well, maybe that could happen if we just pretended that the rest of Star Wars never happened.
Yeah.
Like, so, just fundamentally, no, of course not. Vader's gonna be in Empire Strikes Back. That's what all this shit is leading up to, is Vader's gonna be in Empire Strikes Back. Luke, Han, Leia are all gonna be in Empire Strikes Back. So there's literally no stakes right now. And, even if they tried to do stuff between Jedi and Force Awakens, Han's gonna survive until Force Awakens, Leia's gonna survive, Luke's gonna survive.
R2-D2 and C-3PO are gonna survive.
Yeah, so there's just a problem of there are no... and Chewbacca. I always feel bad for leaving out Chewbacca.
Yeah, he never got a medal.
He gets left out of his medal, he gets left out of the Leia hug.
And if you watch the old VHSs that are in full screen, he gets cut out of the final shot. Like, come on.
Bastards.
Yeah.
No, but everyone's gonna survive. So when you do a prequel, there's just a really big problem of stakes. So you almost have to write a story wherein you can't use particular kinds of drama to make it feel dramatic, right?
Right.
Like you can't put a character in a James Bond-esque death trap if your movie's a prequel and really expect your audience to be super invested in it. I mean, unless you're playing for or you're shooting for video, where you have a reasonable chance that someone will watch this movie before they watch the original movie.
Right, and this is where, when you talk about dramatic, the dramatic element, that's where I was actually kind of leading into that. I'm glad you brought that up. Was when we have like a prequel, like, okay, we have our original story, it starts pretty small, and then you get a sequel, it gets bigger, you get the third movie, it gets really big, and then let's take the X-Men movies, for example, right? So, got the first one, it's a low budget, like, kind of interesting, early 2000s, Matrix just came out, kind of action movie that has a political, psychological element to it, but it's small, and I like that. And then we have X2, which gets bigger, and then we have X-Men 3, which is just this gigantic, bloated, extraneous, experiment and noise. And then after that, like, it gets so big, and then but now we're making a X-Men Origins, like, prequel about Wolverine, and we've just had this big thing, and people just want it to get bigger and bigger. So now we're having this awkward situation where we need to make this huge, big prequel about Wolverine to where he needs to be, and by the end of it, he needs to be back in a small place for the start of X-Men 1. So it's that knowledge of knowing that this was made after what had come before it, but it takes place before what started it. Mm-hmm. So it's such a bizarre transition. And I think expectations and just natural storytelling, but logical storytelling, are just at such conflict with one another that prequels just become kind of a mess.
Yeah, and I think it gets back to you need a story to tell for them to work, which, I mean, that sounds all profound and shit until you think about the fact that it's kind of necessary for everything.
Yeah.
That would almost be profound if it wasn't obvious.
It took me a second for that to sink in, but...
Yeah, it's just like, it's one of those things, like, you want a shortcut to philosophy?
Sure thing.
Just say really obvious things, but try to do so in a really profound manner, and people will think you're a genius.
The 2 increment, addition to the 2 increment equals the 4 increment.
No. More base than that. I'm looking at a thing, but when you really think about it, I have no ability to perceive that thing. It's like, it's this crazy fucking world of philosophy. Anyway, no, so a prequel, it, once again, I keep coming back to this. Yes, it can work. Does it always work? Obviously not. I think it's telling that most of the good, quote-unquote good prequels, you either wouldn't know they're a prequel, or they're technically not, where they're kind of mixing in and crossing paths with the original movie. You know, that's certainly a problem for pulling examples. So when you talk about just straight, this movie is a prequel, no bones about it, you can get, I don't know, is Red Dragon a good movie?
I don't know. I've never seen Red Dragon.
I like Red Dragon. I like all the Hannibal movies.
I have seen one Hannibal movie.
Oh, really?
I know. I know. And it's the one everyone's seen.
Silence of the Lambs, of course. No, Red Dragon, I think it works. If nothing else, Ed Norton's fucking amazing.
Ed Norton is a national treasure. He and Tim Roth just need to be in more things in general. I love Edward Norton and Tim Roth.
Who's Tim Roth?
Tim Roth? Did you see Reservoir Dogs?
Yeah.
He's the cop. He's the undercover cop.
Not ringing any bells.
Okay, do you remember? You seen Pulp Fiction, obviously.
Yeah.
He's him and his wife are the one who stick up the diner.
Oh, okay.
He looks like Ryan Gosling's dad.
Okay. Anyway.
He looks like Ryan Gosling's dad if he was British.
Okay. It's cool, Connor.
Okay.
It's cool. Just settle down, Connor.
We're gonna be cool like Fonzie's up in here.
What is Fonzie? Fonzie is cool. Tarantino's dialogue.
Speaking of
anyway.
which, I saw Shane Black's latest movie, The Nice Guys.
Uh-huh.
People need to watch that. It's awesome.
Okay.
And it stars Ryan Gosling. Making it kind of relevant. Oh, well.
Connor.
I know.
Okay.
And I'm done.
Okay. No, but it just comes back to, you need a story that's going to be justified, and sure, that's an obvious thing, but that's not what we get more often than not.
Yeah.
So for a prequel to work, it's nothing wrong. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with it as a form of storytelling, because once again, Aristotle is wrong. It's just, it's hard to do well, and a lot of times you just don't need them.
Yeah.
You know, Dumb and Dumber, for example. There's no reason, like, to borrow a phrase from Steve Baxi, this movie does not justify its own existence. You know, it's hard to say what makes a prequel work, other than it's just a natural thing that works. But even when it does, it's almost a pain. Trying to think here. The God of War games. You ever play any of those?
I don't play games. I'm sorry.
At all. Okay.
Well, I mean, I played the Batman Arkham games. I've played some N64 games, but...
Okay, well, the God of War series had an interesting history, because it did 1 and 2, and then between 2 and 3 we got a PSP game called Chains of Olympus that was a prequel game. And still got great gameplay, especially considering it was on PSP first. You can get it on collection now for PS3, actually. Considering it was on PSP, it's actually a pretty good game, gameplay-wise, but the story is, I mean, it's got its moments where it's actually kind of touching, but you wouldn't want to play it first before playing God of War 1, because it ruins some of the most brilliant stuff in God of War 1.
Right. Oh, well, that's a... I actually have played a video game prequel before.
What's that?
Arkham Origins.
Yeah, I've not played that.
I'll say this, and here's the reason why, like, as a video game, it just doesn't work as a prequel. Because the mechanics are an extension of Arkham City.
Mm-hmm.
But, and you have gadgets... one moment.
Yeah, you have the grappling gun that allows you to just zip across the city in a matter of seconds. That you was like an experimental prototype in, Arkham City.
Right, yeah.
And so, like, why he has it all those years ago, but he didn't have it... Like, you can make a case for why he didn't have it in Asylum, because Asylum was a much smaller, more claustrophobic game.
Right.
But and that problem would have been solved if you just happened to have it at the beginning of City, but he doesn't. So it's just one of those things. It's like, it's a gameplay mechanic, it's just a MacGuffin that we all kind of accept.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about the basic fighting mechanics are, like, advanced from Arkham City.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have... And in Arkham Asylum doesn't have some things that you have in Arkham City. So it just doesn't work on a gameplay level as a prequel.
It works on a gameplay level because it's an extension of the gameplay. It doesn't work on a story level from that extension of the gameplay.
Right, and maybe it's because I'm just so uneducated in the world of video games that it was just weird.
No, I mean, I don't want to even kind of sound like an expert. I'm just saying, from a progression in gameplay, it's a passable extension. From a progression in story based around integrating with the gameplay, it's a regression. And so I've still not played Arkham Origins. I have it. I got it free when I had to buy a new PS3, and I just have no interest in playing that.
I will say this, though. You have a DLC costume that is the DC 1 million Batman costume. And that's the best thing.
You have the Sinestro Corps Batman from my Green Lantern Blu-ray, because that was out around the same time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the Sinestro Corps Batman costume for Arkham City is pretty cool.
That's cool. But then there's also, like, but when you get to Arkham City and, like, some of the story, like, it's just a Batman story, but they just incorporate references and elements that are prequel in... Like, it's the prequelitis thing, where let's just include references, because people recognize those. But on a story
it's weird,
level...
because sometimes that's fun. Like, when you have... I'm trying to think of a good example of this. When you have characters who, you know they're going to betray each other in the future or whatever, you can do something that's, like, not only just a fun little nod for the audience, but you can do something that's actually kind of, heartbreaking and interesting. Like Obi-Wan and Anakin could have been.
Right.
It's like, there's that last scene of Obi-Wan and Anakin together before Anakin eventually does his fall to the dark side thing, where, like, Obi-Wan's last words to him are something to the effect of, "I've trained you better than I ever could have hoped. You're going to be a better Jedi than I ever will be." Like, he says something to that effect, and that's, like, the last time they talk to each other until they fight. Which is, like, if everything else had been good, that would have been heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But at that point, you're just like, did Obi-Wan go and talk to a guy at a 50s diner earlier? You're just like, what the fuck? It's like 3 years later, but you're still scratching your head from that colossal what the fuck moment.
Yeah, that was strange.
So I'm trying to think of other movies where it's a prequel and it just has elements of that, though, where it's someone says something that, like, it's foreshadowing of what their relationship will become.
Did you see Pan?
Pan?
That god-awful Peter Pan movie last year?
No, I did not.
One moment.
Connor has a dog.
Hey there. Okay.
Connor is the new Milan.
I'm so sorry. There are dogs like getting at it right now. Like they're not in that way. They're just like growling at you. Like yeah, there's an old one lying on the ground. There's a young one just shouting at it. Yeah. 1 second.
Oh, that's hilarious. Connor's the new Milan. It's beautiful. Anyway.
All right, yeah. So, anyways, that awful movie Pan last year had a part where like they're in the fairy world, and this is the part where it gets like hilarious, because it becomes like a special effects show, but it looks like 2002. But they're like in the fairy world, and like Peter is strapped to the mast, and then there's like translucent white tiger lily strapped next to him, and then. There's like fairies, and he's like, "Go away! They're here to hurt you, fairies!" And then Tiger Lily says, "That one, she likes you. She says her name is Tinkerbell."
Mm-hmm.
And then the scene goes on, and then Tinkerbell's never referenced ever again.
Yeah, that's weird.
And then there's like James Hook is in there, but he doesn't have a hook hand, so it's just kind of weird that his name's Hook. And then at the end, like he becomes captain of like a ship, and you know Hook and Peter are still friends by the end of it. And then like the final shot is like it felt like all the stuff was like 80 yards into the final cut at like the last minute, where you hear their voices as you see their ship going off into the distance, and it's like. "All right, Peter, I don't want to be your enemy now. All right, Captain Hook." Like, it's just a bunch of, like, jab, jab, get it, wink, wink, get it. That's Peter Pan and Captain Hook, and they're friends, but they shouldn't be friends. It's just that kind of just cutesy, kind of lame, obvious, pandering prequel stuff.
You know what movie I haven't seen since I was a kid?
What's that?
But I know there's a sequel to it, and I have no conception of how it could possibly work.
What's that?
The Fox and the Hound.
Huh.
I've not seen The Fox and the Hound since I was a child, but I do remember like some of the basic story elements of it.
Yeah.
Particularly that there's a betrayal and like a lot of heartbreak and stuff. And then there's a sequel, and I'm pretty sure it's a prequel, but a lot of the movie happened already with them like young and as friends. And so I guess like the sequel might just be like an entire movie out of that section of the movie. Which, once again, we're getting into the prequel that runs kind of concurrent with the film that it's a prequel to.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know, does that deserve its own classification?
Yeah, because after prequels weren't really, like, it kind of caught on with the general audiences that prequels just weren't as good as we hoped they would be. There was always, it's a prequel, but it takes place at the, congruent to the original property. It's a prequel, but it's almost like its own story, like Prometheus. It's you know what I mean? Like there's a bunch of caveats.
Well, that's the thing. Is like Prometheus almost works better when you don't know it's an alien film.
Yeah.
Because the whole time you're just sitting there, okay, where are the fucking xenomorphs? Where are the goddamn xenomorphs? I want my fucking xenomorphs. And then you realize, oh, they're trying to introduce a new monster.
Yeah, and it's weird because like I think that whole project started as an Alien prequel, but then it became something else, and you could tell it was becoming something else, but had the same structure as Alien. And then when you get to the end of it, you could tell that people were like, well, no, people are here for the xenomorphs, they're here for the aliens. So then they just kind of put it in there. It's so strange. That whole movie is really strange.
Yeah, I've still never seen Prometheus. I just know of it now. Like, I didn't even know that was an Alien prequel.
Yeah.
Until, like, a year after it was out, someone just told me, and I was like, oh, I just thought it was a shitty movie.
Yeah, that's why everyone was excited for it, because it was a Ridley Scott Alien movie.
I'm sorry, everyone. Nah, I don't care. If you like the movie, it's fine. I don't know. Prequels are just an odd thing, because I agree with you that they don't work, but I don't think it's because they can't. I think there are certain fundamental problems. Like, if you're doing a prequel, you probably should try to write it in such a way that your characters aren't in, like, you know, death situations, near-death situations.
Right.
Just because fundamentally your audience probably knows that they're going to survive. I mean, you know, it gets into a whole thing, like, if a character's name is in the title of the movie, you probably shouldn't, like, that same argument works. If the character's name is in the title of the movie, then you probably shouldn't put them in a near-death situation, because they're probably going to survive. The audience kind of intrinsically knows that.
Right.
Which is why it's so shocking when they don't, but still, unless you're planning to shock the hell out of everyone, then you probably shouldn't put your characters in that kind of situation.
Right. And I think I kind of nailed it in my head why, and I don't know why it took me this long to really think of it, but prequels feel more like a business decision than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that we kind of hit on that earlier. Yeah, something just is surprisingly successful, so we have to either make a sequel out of it, which can conceivably work. Sometimes it's odd.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the example as, like, when you asked about whether or not we've done prequels, I went back and just looked through and we did sequels, and you know, it's not a good movie, but the story is surprisingly justified for how just bizarre it sounds to make a sequel to this film. Taken 2.
Oh, Taken 2.
Like, it's still not a good movie. It's like a fun action thing still. But the thing about that movie is you hear they're making a sequel to Taken, and you're like, what, does his daughter get kidnapped again or something? Yeah. And so it sounds like a really stupid idea. But then when that movie opens up with the fathers of the people that he fucking murdered and tortured planning revenge, I'm like, okay, yeah, actually this story makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Like, it is a completely justified story at that point. It's, you know, it's like oddly paced and plotted, so it doesn't work ultimately.
Right.
But the story itself is surprisingly justified at that point.
Yeah, and then the thing about prequels, though, and when I say it's like a business decision, it's like, all right, this character really did well, and like we can, you know, this thing really took off in a way we didn't anticipate. Well, if we make it a prequel, then, and we set it far enough back, who knows the infinite amount of stories that we could tell now. And I think that's really where, like, you know, Star Wars prequels came in. It's like they you know, specifically decided to do 3. So then it's like there's spin-offs, but spin-offs didn't really, you know, catch on either. And then spin-offs almost like the spin-off fad almost became the prequel fad.
Yeah, and I think I like spin-offs more.
I do too.
Once again, I can't think of any good examples. I don't know, 300 Rise of an Empire is more of a spin-off than it is a prequel.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And once again, it's not a great movie or anything. I don't like it nearly as much as I do the original, but it's still a pretty clever flick.
Yeah, I think 300 Rise of an Empire was, like you said, it wasn't good, but it wasn't terrible by any means. There were still some things. It's
an eat your popcorn and just sit back and enjoy kind of movie.
Ava Green is just like chewing any and all scenery around her, and she is awesome to watch.
Yeah. I hope you fight better than you fuck. Fucking great line.
Yeah. She is chewing all the green screen for what it's worth.
Right, all the scenery that is not there.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there's like just from the prequel level, there's actually some historical stuff that I really like.
Yeah,
in that movie.
I do too.
Like, did you notice the Xerxes bridge scene? It's in really briefly in the background of one of the scenes with him.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, for those that don't know, just because I never get a chance to talk about this. So, Xerxes was trying to move his army to Greece, and, like, there's, you know, fucking seas, Mediterraneans, and other oceans and shit that you have to deal with to get around from Persia to Greece. And they would have had to take, like, months to go around this body of water. So this is one of the most impressive feats of engineering in the ancient world, is he gets all his engineers to come up with a way to do a bridge. And the way they do it is they just get a bunch of boats and put them, like, one right next to each other and extend planks across them. Which, honestly, makes a whole hell of a lot more sense than suspension bridges, if you ask me. But anyway, and so he was able to move his army across in a matter of days as opposed to months.
Yeah, yeah.
and that like really almost fucked over the Athenian navy.
Right.
But in 300 Rise of an Empire, during one of the scenes when Eva Green and Xerxes are talking, you can see behind him his army going across that bridge, done in the whole Frank Miller art style kind of thing.
No, that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's just one of those really cool, neat little things that they threw in there. And this is gonna sound fucking bizarre, but 300 and 300 Rise of an Empire are fundamentally, hands down, the most historically accurate films I've ever seen. because they're told from the perspective of somebody who's apparently was there telling a story to inspire other troops. It's a war story, man. It totally works when you look at it that way. It's exactly how a soldier would tell that story. Gay imagery of muscular men and all. Anyway, is there anything else to say about prequels? Yeah, I kind of agree. They don't really work overall, but there's no reason they can't.
That's a good point. I don't think we've cracked the code just yet, but I think it's possible. I just think as of right now, I just haven't seen anything to convince me otherwise. I want to be optimistic about this kind of a thing, but I feel like I'm at a point personally where I just can't be optimistic about prequels. However, one thing that's interesting about 300 Rise of an Empire is it says based on the graphic novel Xerxes by Frank Miller. Xerxes has not been released. There was a promotional image, and that's it.
Frank Miller has such a shit time with that stuff.
I mean, it's like
I'm still waiting for the next issue of All-Star Batman and Robin.
Oh man, you're like, okay. Just crazy though. It's like I remember watching reviews for 300, and like I saw the Jeremy Johns review, and he was like, I mean, I guess this thing was based off of a graphic novel, so I mean, I guess there is like a source material. And he shows like the concept image, the promotional image that Frank Miller whipped up. And then, but if you actually dig around, that's the only thing of that graphic novel that has actually been published. Like,
that's hilarious.
It's funny. But yeah, I don't think I have anything more to add about prequels.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree. Nothing has quite nailed it 100%. Be interesting to see what people say in the comments. I'm sure someone's gonna give me a comment about like this movie or that movie. I guess if I had to pick the best example that we were able to come up with in this conversation that is 100% no bones about it a prequel, it's gonna be Batman Mask of the Phantasm.
Right.
And I don't love that movie or anything. I think it's a solid flick, but it's just, not my favorite thing ever. But that is probably the best example that we've been able to come up with. But if you guys want to leave a comment with a better one, please do. I'm really curious to see what people come up with. All right. That will do it for this week's episode of Geeky Gentlemen. Maybe you'll get Snowpiercer next week if you behave. This is all your fault. You know what you did. Anyway. Until next time, I'm the philosopher.
And I'm the sexually traumatized guest.
I forgot you're still doing that. And we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.